De Rei Arthur, a Lenda da Espada. Nós estamos ao vivo no Facebook e também no YouTube do Omelete. Você pode mandar as suas perguntas, porque nós vamos fazê-las aqui durante um bom tempo, onde nós vamos entrevistar Charlie Hunnam. Charlie, thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
It's a real pleasure. And I was reading an article today that you were on a stadium yesterday. You arrived here in Brazil yesterday.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
How it was, the experience to be in the stadium and know the people from Brazil?
Well, it's amazing. I grew up in Newcastle in the north of England, and like Sao Paulo, the football there is the religion. They actually call St. James's Park, the football stadium, the church, because that's the main religion of the place. So I got that sense that this was a similar culture. So I felt very honored to be able to go to the stadium and put my feet on that sacred ground. So
nice.
Apparently I brought some luck, I hope, because you won 4-0.
Yeah, 4-0. You got a lot of luck for Palmeiras. Is the team from the stadium.
Yes, of course.
We were there. Nice. So let's talk about King Arthur, the Legend of the Sword, that is the title here in Brazil. What is different from that movie that differentiates itself from all the other adaptations that we saw from the legend itself, King Arthur?
Well, you know, there's always, I think, a bit of a responsibility when you are going to tell a story that's been told before to reinvent it a little bit. Typically, one of the challenges of adapting the Arthurian legend for screen, meaning in a 2-hour increment, is that it's a really long, sprawling story, and so to do the whole story justice is quite difficult. So we condensed it down and really just made, we really just tell the first chapter of the story. It's sort of a basic journey of this young man who has no idea that he's the king, and he's a bit of a bad boy, he's a little bit of a rogue, living in the streets of London, and all of a sudden he's presented with this grand destiny and told that he's the king of England, and of course he feels completely unequipped, or doesn't really feel like he has the skill set to take that challenge on, but of course he accepts it because he realizes that the people of England need a better king than they have. So Guy Ritchie directed it, and I'm sure people at home are very familiar with Guy Ritchie's work. There's always something sort of cheeky and really fun and fresh and cool about the way he sort of creates the worlds around his central characters.
And it's a lot of action too. It's a lot of action scenes they are different from all the other movies of King Arthur. How was to shoot that and to work with Guy Ritchie? Because he has a real particular style, and he has a different take on directing. How was to work with him?
Well, like you said, the action scenes were very, very important to us, not only to make them really fun and exciting, but also to do something original. I mean, I think that we wanted to reinvent sword fighting and to do it in a way that it had never been done before. So that, and I think the result is pretty spectacular in the film, but it created a lot of challenges, because one of the things that we decided was that one of the functions of the sword itself was that it would slow down time for the person who was wielding it. And so in order to do that, if you and I were doing a fight scene together and I'm moving at a faster rate than you are, then we have to shoot you and me separately. So we'd have to figure out all of the choreography and what all of the sequencing of those moves were. Then I would shoot my piece and you would shoot your piece, and then digitally put together. So it creates an enormous challenge technically to shoot those scenes, but I think the result when you see the film is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, it's like a rage mode. For those who play video games, it's like Arthur catch the sword and it enters on a rage mode and it's
Right.
and the times go
right.
slow. It's really nice. And how was to shoot in real locations? I mean, you guys shoot in Wales, right?
Yeah, Wales and in the Highlands of Scotland, which I think, I haven't been fortunate enough to see much of Brazil yet, but I've seen, like in person, but I've seen it in film, and I've seen photographs and stuff, and it looks absolutely beautiful. The geography of the north of England is very different, but you could say equally gorgeous, big mountains and lakes. And
yeah, there's a lot of external locations in the movie. And
yeah, so we had a lot of fun shooting up there. It's always exciting to go to like a very beautiful place to shoot, because it sort of feels a little bit like you're on vacation, going to those those really beautiful places to work every day.
And what caught your attention? What caught your attention to play this impersonation of King Arthur? You work with a lot of good directors, Guillermo del Toro, James Gray, and Judd Apatow. And what caught your attention to play that part?
I'd always been a huge fan of the Arthurian legend. There was another adaptation of the Arthur story by director John Borman. In 1981, he made a film called Excalibur. And when I was a kid, that as kids tend to do, you find a film that you love and watch it over and over. Well, that was one of the films that I found as a boy, maybe 6, 7, 8, and I probably watched that 50 to 100 times.
Jeez.
Like I'd watch it over and over. And it was through like falling in love with that film that I decided I wanted to become an actor initially. So cut to 30 years later, I'm dating myself now, cut to 30 years later, and hearing that Guy Ritchie, who's one of my favorite directors, was going to make the film, it was a no-brainer for me. So then there's a lot of competition in the film business, particularly to get to work with the great directors like Guy Ritchie. So it wasn't an easy role to get. I had to really, really fight for it. And a lot of people wanted this role, but I just fought a little harder than everyone else.
And we heard that Guy Ritchie on the set, he does a lot of improvisation and things just pop in his head, and he has an idea, and you guys just roll with him. How is to work with that? I mean, it's not just going to the script, but have an idea just in that moment. How was to work with in this kind of...
It was a bit disconcerting to begin with, because normally, particularly on a film of this scope, there's a big responsibility, because there's a lot of money being spent, and with that, the way we normally mitigate the anxiety that comes with that responsibility is to do lots and lots of preparation. So normally you get to set and you know exactly what you're going to shoot, and you go through the rhythm over the course of the day of just executing that vision. But with Guy, it became quite clear in the first couple of days that the script was just a blueprint, that was just going to be the jumping off point, and actually the real work would happen on set. So although it was a bit disconcerting to begin with, like once I got into the rhythm of that, it got a really exciting way to work. And he's very collaborative. Like what's one of the things that's so appealing about working with Guy is that he gives total freedom to everybody, whether it's the costume designer or the director of photography or the set designers, everybody that and particularly the actors, everybody that has a job that they've hired to do, he's hired you because he likes what you do and he has a lot of respect, and so therefore he gives you total freedom to interpret the work the way you see fit.
Nice. You're saying about the fight scenes with the sword, and did you guys did a special training for that? Because I know that you are a huge fan from UFC and fights like that. Did you do a special training with the sword, or with with the brawling or body fight?
Well, it's funny, like when you're playing a character who's supposed to be a pretty formidable fighter, whether it's with a sword or on the streets with his fists, you have to sort of, as an actor, cultivate a certain level of confidence. So again, if you and me are doing a scene together and I walk in and have to intimidate you, although it says on the page that I say something and you're intimidated, if you don't look in my eye and believe it, it's not going to be as compelling a scene. It comes down to chemistry. So what was important to me, because I know the type of actors that Guy hires, and they're all sort of rough and tough dudes. So it was important for me to be able to walk in and look someone in the eye and say, listen pal, if it comes down to it, I'll whoop your ass any day of the week and twice on Sunday. So that was why it was important to me to like do a lot of training, just even for myself that wasn't really involved in the work in the actual filming. So I did a lot of boxing, a lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu that Guy got me into. Guy's actually a long time practitioner of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's a black belt from I forget which Gracie, one of the Gracies out of New York. And so I train with Higa Machado, who's also a very well-respected Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter. But then the other element of the sword fighting is that fighting with swords is dangerous, even if it's for film. You know, I've done a lot of fighting in my career, and sometimes mistakes happen. You know, and if a mistake happens when you're fighting with your fist, you break someone's nose, or you give them a black eye, and although it's terrible for a minute, then, you know, pretty quickly you have a laugh about it, and you say, I'm sorry about that, and you wipe the blood off, and you keep on going. But if you make a mistake with the sword, then it can be a little bit more serious, you know?
But it was a heavy sword, because on the movie it seems that Excalibur, it's heavier, and it is the most powerful sword in the world. It was a heavy sword, really, or it was just a practical and lighter sword? How did you guys?
It was pretty heavy to actually, because everybody was nervous about the real potential of accident happening with the sword fighting. We started off doing with plastic swords, but you know, as you start to get like carried away and then into the sequence and feel more and more confident, you'd put more effort into it, and I kept breaking the swords, and there was only, you know, we had maybe about 60 of these plastic swords, and by the time I'd broken 40 of them, they started to think, you know what, we're gonna have to graduate to the metal swords. So then the metal sword actually was quite heavy.
Nice. I heard a story that you like surf, right? Right. I heard a story that one time when you're surfing, you encountered a shark. Is that right? How it was that? I mean, how did it happen?
I actually don't know what it was. I was in Costa Rica on the west coast, on the Pacific coast, and there was a break that was really, really gradual, long break. So, you know, I'm quite like average surfer, just a beginner, but this was a beautiful, gentle break. So, you know, you get it like out far and be able to ride it all the way in. You know, you get like a 2-minute ride on this thing. But the reality was you had to paddle out very, very far, you know, and so the first day I'd go a little bit, and then the second day I'd go a little further, and by a week in I was feeling quite confident. And so I was out to the point where, like, back on the beach, you know, people look like this big. I mean, I was so far out in the water, and 2 waves came up like this and toppled me backwards off my board. And I was pushing myself up back onto my board like this, and BAM! Something slammed me to the point where, like, it took my breath away. And so, I don't know what it was, because I didn't see it, and I was so terrified and discombobulated that I didn't really spend too much time looking around. So there was 2 things it could have been. They have blackjack there, you know, that can grow to be about 60 pounds, and they swim quite aggressively into schools of smaller fish to, you know, to shock them, and then they eat them up. And so they actually ride the waves themselves. Or there was also a possibility that it was a shark, because when I got back in and told some of the guys on the beach what had just happened, they told me that there'd been a fatal shark attack about 8 months before exactly where I was. So one way or another, I got lucky.
Yeah, you got lucky. You got lucky. Jeez, that's a huge story.
Do you surf?
No, I don't. But we have a lot of beaches here in Brazil, especially in Recife. That's a city. They have a lot of sharks there, and the beach is always closed to the surfers and something like that.
At certain times of the year? Or?
Yeah. It's we have. I mean, the beach is closed, but there's a lot of stories that they had shark attacks there. And one last question, and we have from the public, from a reader called Mateus. He wants to know two things. The first one is if you miss Jax a lot of playing Jax, and the other one is why you are not the Green Arrow already on the huge screen on DC Universe.
Okay,
The first
question is
one,
yes,
Jax.
I do.
Do you miss him a lot?
I do.
It was 7-8 years playing him, right?
Yeah, and he became my best friend. I mean, when you play a character like that and you spend 8 months of the year trying to bring him to life, he starts to live inside you, and he became one of my best friends. And so when we finally had to lay him to rest at the end of that, it felt like a loss of a real friend, you know, like a bereavement. And it took me a good month to get past that, where every day I just felt sad, as though I'd lost like a real pal, you know. So that was a pretty weird but like beautiful experience. So I do miss him. You know, they're actually going back right now to do a spin-off show, the Mayan show. Yeah. And I just sort of, there's a bit of me wishes that we hadn't killed Jax again, because I could have come back and, you know, done a little bit on that show. But maybe as a ghost, who knows?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, why not?
And then what was the second question?
Why you're not the Green Arrow? Yeah, everybody's talking about that. We were talking with our readers about that. And he has to play this one, he has to play this one.
You know, I'm not a comic book fan, so I don't really know the Green Arrow. Why is that? Because do I look like him?
Yeah, a lot. A lot.
Okay.
Not just that, but your way of acting and all your roles. I mean, people are going crazy about that.
But have they made a Green Arrow film?
Yeah, we have a TV series called Arrow. There's a different take on the character.
Okay.
But the original character, it's a lot like you. I mean, he's blonde and, you know, he has a beard.
Okay.
And it's
well, come on, DC, what's up? Give me a call. I'm here, right?
Yeah. Man, thank you very much for being here to talk with us. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoy Brazil.
No, I'm having a lovely time, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Gente, muito obrigado por vocês terem assistido, e essa entrevista vai legendada daqui a pouco no Facebook e no YouTube. Não esqueçam, Rei Arthur estreia na próxima quinta-feira em todos os cinemas do Brasil. Valeu!
Why is the water dropped?
There are rumors. The legend of the sword. Of a king other than yourself. Find him. I know your story. What kind of a man would you have become had you inherited your father's kingdom instead of being raised in a brothel? Run, son! What gave you such drive? Come on! You felt it, didn't you? The power.
It was Vortigern who murdered your father. But what you didn't account for is what you can do with this sword.
You need to be careful. His power is increasing.
When people fear you, it is the most intoxicating sensation a man can possess.
You're starting to mean something. You're no longer a myth.
I'm gonna kill him.
Put him on his knees! You wanted the prophecy? Raise that sword! Show the people the power of Excalibur!
You're playing with fire.
But doesn't it make the palace burn well?